between when the ships actually move out of the Strait of Hormuz and how long they take to get to Japan. Imagine these tankers move at the same speed as a bicycle. Okay, they are not moving very quickly. It is a slow, steady haul from the Strait of Hormuz to Japan. It's 20-25 days. Okay, we're just now at that point since the strait has been shut down, and that's why you're continuing to see oil move higher here. Is the supply squeeze is actually now starting to take place. Shout out to KT Baby for the mug. People sending me mugs now, which is wild. So anyway, on the macro, now that we have oil continuing higher here, I don't think this is going to stop. They are continuing to threaten to release the strategic reserves there in Japan, or, they already are. It's really not having an effect on the market. They're continuing to move higher here. More inflation in their economy is inevitably going to cause the Bank of Japan to have to raise interest rates. So that's where we are. You've also got the yen versus the USD. If you guys, again, living under a rock, don't know what to look for, I'll pull it up here for you. We are currently sitting at 159.89, right on the threshold, knocking on the door of 160, which is the danger zone for the yen versus the USD. With oil up, the yen depreciating against the dollar, you got the stock markets are up. I haven't seen what the Nikkei was doing this evening, but yesterday it was up about a point. Today, not quite a point, 70 basis points. Actually 7 basis points, just barely up on the day. It's not, trending sideways is kind of what you'd expect here. There's a lot of chop in the market, back and forth. Same thing for crypto and the other markets. Not a whole lot of movement one way or the other. People want decisive action. They either want lower or they want higher. And we're just continuing to chop sideways. Bitcoin back around 70,000. Where is Bitcoin? Let's see. Yeah, 68,440 is Bitcoin. We were back over 70,000 there for just a little bit in the last 24 hours, and then back down again. XRP doing the same thing, hanging out around 135, and then back down to around 130. I'm not saying it's a good time to buy, but man, seems like a good time to buy. And that's probably a good time for my disclaimer. This is not financial advice. It's only entertainment and educational purposes. You should always consult with a attorney or a tax professional or a financial advisor before making any legal, tax, or financial decisions. The opinions shared tonight are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group. If you need those professionals, they're going to be a lot more conservative with things, and fiduciaries. You can reach out to us at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and we have all those people either on staff or strategic partnerships to be able to provide you with that expertise for your digital assets. So, still pretty much in the same position that we have been. A couple things that I'm watching for that I think will escalate the situation here. Iran has threatened to cut the underwater sea cables that allow for transmission of data and the internet between a couple different jurisdictions. That's kind of one of the things that have been of interest, and the reason for that, you might say, well, why does that matter? Well, in order for data to move from the stock market in London or other exchanges or global trade markets, and between them and the U.S., there's latency, and it's not a ton of latency. It's the time it takes to pass through that underwater sea cable. If that were to be cut, really the only recourse at that point is Starlink. And now that we have the amount of satellites that we do, the whole point of Starlink has been to disintermediate that whole technology. It cuts the transmission time in less than half, which they've been trying to shave off microseconds for decades, trying to straighten the underwater sea cables. Starlink completely makes that obsolete. So if you wanted real-time transactions, if you wanted to move to distributed ledger technology for payments and all that stuff, Starlink is the thing at the end of the day. This person says, Elon, look, like, you don't have to like him, but he is building infrastructure that's going to be used at scale, and it's going to disintermediate a ton of different industries. Already has. So all that being said, I'm watching that. Also watching for a potential sanction of Tether. You know, I've been talking about this for a long time. Now that we have Iran taking cryptocurrency or stable coins to basically have payment for people allowing them to go through the Strait of Hormuz, there might be reason or means for the U.S. to sanction certain protocols or networks. Not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm saying there's precedent that's been set by them sanctioning Tornado Cash. For them to sanction Tron or a stablecoin network would be pretty much unprecedented, but shutting down Strait of Hormuz is also unprecedented. So, you know, drastic times call for drastic measures, and I think we're in one of those positions. So we'll have to see what shakes out there, but those are the two things that I'm watching closely. And like I've talked about before, but I'll touch on one more time before we get into the questions here, you know, the Fed is really in between a rock and a hard place. If they lower interest rates, they know that the reverse carry trade will unwind. But they need to lower interest rates because the credit markets and everything are freezing up. People can't refinance their debt. They can't get access to liquidity. A lot of people are about to go bankrupt, and there's going to be a lot of defaults if they don't start easing in the very near future. And the Fed always reacts too late. They're always using market data that's already happened in order to make decisions instead of forecasting things ahead of time and pivoting prior to when there's an issue. So, the person says I froze. I don't know if I froze on YouTube or if I froze on X. This person says I froze also. It says it's uploading, so you guys will catch it later. I'm sure it'll upload. Yeah, WTI crude, Brent, all of the oil continues higher with the conflict there between the U.S. and Iran. I don't think that's going to stop. Even if they shut down or if they stop the conflict, you're going to be fine. They are. Well, you're not going to be fine. It's going to continue higher is really what's going to happen. Because, again, like there's significant delays between that oil being shipped out of the Gulf and through the Strait, and then, you know, passing to whatever jurisdiction is going to be able to access it. The U.S., we still have a few more tankers moving to the U.S. and a few other jurisdictions before we're really going to feel it. But, I mean, you're already seeing it at the pump. I just filled up for $4. Unusual, right, for oil in Texas to be this high. I've seen it at $4 a few times in my life. We've got diesel over $5 here in Texas, so I can't imagine what it is in the rest of the nation. It's only got to be worse than that. You know, California, I'm sure, is looking at $7, $8, $9 gas, which is just absurd. So, you know, a lot of people are not going to be traveling this summer. That's going to impact a lot of the vacation dependent economies. There are jets that are being grounded because there's not enough fuel on that side. Not just jets, private jets, but also large corporate, or not corporate, but enterprise aircraft, you know, American Airlines, Delta, many of the others. South Dakota is at $3.64. Sounds like I need to come up to South Dakota to get my gas. So again, I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. Even if they reopen the strait, it's going to take 30, 60, 90 days before the supply chains get back to where they were before. So I would expect, you know, more inflation before it gets better, and just know that you're going to have to be dealing with that for, you know, whatever period of time. Again, 30, 60 days after the strait is reopened. Now, markets are forward looking, so they are going to price that in, but commodities move a little bit different than stocks or equities do. So just be aware of that. So reverse carry trade is still underway, and a lot of people are like, you said when it got shut down it was going to happen immediately. Look, I wish I could forecast the exact time frames between all these dominoes falling. I just know what the dominoes are. Okay, the first domino has fallen, and there's reverbs and ripple effects of that domino, and eventually the Bank of Japan is going to have to raise interest rates. They're going to have to use monetary policy to strengthen their currency, and when they do, you're going to see the reverse carry trade unwind. I don't think they're going to do that until we have full guidance or alignment around the yield for stablecoins here in the US. Once the banks and the exchanges come to a resolution on that, it doesn't have to get passed in the Clarity Act, okay? They just have to know how this is going to work. Or maybe they pass a separate bill, completely separate of the Clarity Act, around yield for stablecoins. Maybe it's a really skinny bill that they pass, because I don't know that we're even going to see the Clarity Act this year. At this point, I mean, you know, Brad Garlinghouse is optimistic that we will see it passed before the end of April or May. If we don't get it passed in the next couple months, I can tell you it's highly unlikely. If we don't make it by summertime, midterms are going to take over. It'll be very difficult for Clarity Act to get passed here in 2026. Yeah, this person says called the Genius Act. I mean, I was there on Capitol Hill, so it's difficult for me to miss that one. You know, a lot of people, again, I've been very blessed to be in positions and rooms and talk to the right people to understand exactly what's going on. And I try to relay that information to you guys. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people that say they know what's going on or think they do. And there's a lot of smart people. I'm not saying anybody else is, you know, not as smart as I am. Plenty of people are smarter than I am, to be honest with you. I just, again, am very blessed to be in rooms and have conversations with people that actually know what's going on. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday night to come hang out with me. And hopefully you're getting value from this. If you are, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. We got Ernesto. He says, hello, Jake. I'm from Mexico. Big fan. Good to see you, dude. I'm trying to set up my LLC with code, and it's not working anymore. Thanks for all that you do. So, glad you brought this up, Ernesto. We are days away from launching our app, the Digital Ascension Group app or web portal, where you'll be able to manage your LLC. You'll have a bank account spun up there. We're white labeling that solution from Uphold, so it'll be powered by Uphold. You'll have an exchange account. You'll be able to trade Bitcoin, XRP, XLM, XDC, and Cardano will be the first 5 assets that we allow for trading. 1% trading fee, no spread. There are some monthly costs associated with that, but that's to maintain corporate veil and all of the other, you know, benefits that we're going to be providing those that are working with us there. Annual renewal, you know, all the stuff around the LLC. And the LLC is actually dropping down. It's going to be $1,500. So we've moved away from Laughlin, no longer working with them. We've in-housed all this to be able to streamline this service for people and make sure you're getting the best service possible and the expertise around digital assets not being outsourced to somebody else at this point. So all that being said, super excited for that to go live Monday next week, April 13th. And if you want a sneak peek, you can go join the mastermind at beyondbroke.com, pay $2 for the first month, and you can get on the waiting list to get the beta early access for those there in that group. So you can hang out, Ernesto, till Monday, and it's actually going to save you some money if you want to wait till then, my brother. And excited to work with you. Hopefully, I talk with an attorney, an estate planner, or somebody, tax attorney there in Mexico, and make sure that the LLC domestic here in the U.S. is the best choice for you.
Can you stop and restart the TikTok? The connect.
How about now, Brown Cow? Is this any better over here on TikTok? Is it still glitching bad? All right. Well, we got this next one here. We got KN2000. They say, hey, everyone, rookie question. Can you give me the rookie version of tokenizing a home? I just seen that Grant Cardone is about to tokenize $5 billion. Help. And loving the content. It's a great question. Appreciate the super chat and the support on the channel. So tokenization of your home. So when he says he's tokenizing $5 billion worth of real estate, Grant Cardone has a fund that he manages. I think the majority of what he uses to, you know, sell interest in the real estate are Reg A offerings here in the U.S. That's the securities offering. There's a lot of, you know, compliance that's around that in order to be able to provide that, especially to retail consumers. So he's tokenizing the fund. He's not tokenizing the real estate itself, because to tokenize the real estate itself, you'd have to put the deed and title on chain. The deed and title on chain, or that digital representation of those things, are not they've not been designated by Congress that they are legally the title or deed of those properties. Until that happens, I don't think you're going to see the actual tokenization of the properties themselves. I think that they will continue to have wrappers around them that have been tokenized for liquidity. So REITs will be ways that, you know, they tokenize real estate. Real estate funds, like Grant Cardone has, is another great way to be able to tokenize real estate and provide people, you know, access to these products that might not have it otherwise, and also liquidity for people, right? So democratizing access and providing liquidity are the benefits of tokenization. And by Grant tokenizing his fund, I'm sure he's probably doing it with Securitize or Ondo. He's going to be listing that somewhere, and that'll trade more freely and provide liquidity, and also probably will trade at a premium compared to you know, what it would being less liquid or less available to other people. So that's how that works today. I'm with you. It's going to be cool to be able to fractionalize your home, or, you know, tokenize the deed, title, property, have a full provenance, you know, all your warranties and reps and insurance and everything done right there in your wallet. You know, I built a whole application for supercars for that, which, you know, still hasn't quite been used. But all that being said, I do think that that's, you know, in the next 3 years, we are going to see regulation from Congress designating the digital representation of these titles as lawful title to things, and you'll be able to transfer that interest via a app on your phone or a wallet that you hold those tokenized representations or digital titles in. Joey, my man, he says, tinfoil hat, one objective of rocket ship around the moon is to test XRP at distance. Can't call it space money without proof. I mean, sure. I like the tinfoil hat. In Ripple's commercials, they have used astronauts in the past and sent payments from space. So that just tells you that that can operate, and that's the whole premise behind what we need in order for, one, an agentic economy to exist at scale, and that's why Ripple's invested in T54 with the X402 standard. Big deal there. I don't think enough people really understand what the impact of that's going to be. And then separate of that, you know, if we have multiple economies across multiple planets, you need some type of interstellar commerce that allows for transactions between those economies. The XRPL would absolutely facilitate that. If you listen to Greg Kidd at all, he talks about it being an intergalactic currency. So Greg Kidd was the 4th or 5th employee at Ripple, got them the meeting with the Fed in 2014. Big player and component for how they've been able to be so successful over the last 13 years. My comment, they say, market pointing to rate hike at April BOJ meeting. Would rate hike at their scheduled meeting cause the reverse carry trade to unwind, or does it need to be an unscheduled emergency meeting? If so, what percentage rate hike is needed? A couple of the different people there at the BOJ have said that their rates need to really be around 1.5. They need to raise it another 75 basis points. If they moved that aggressively at a standard meeting, it would absolutely cause the reverse carry trade to unwind. Now, if people are expecting 25 bips and they move more than that, that's enough to unwind the reverse carry trade. So if people are expecting them to hold stable and they move, or they're expecting, you know, 25 bips and they move, they will add that into the market. Again, markets are forward looking. So it needs to be more than what people are expecting in order to be able to, you know, push the reverse carry trade quickly to unwind. I do think, you know, the Fed has had multiple emergency meetings where they've come out and invoked or changed certain monetary policy, almost always, you know, loosening the monetary policy, not tightening. It looks like the Fed could be raising rates here in the U.S. because of the inflation that we're feeling. And again, they're backed into between a rock and a hard place. You have inflation in the economy, and the jobs numbers are, you know, not good. And so, you know, they need to raise interest rates to offset the inflation or reduce empty money supply. But they also need to lower interest rates so that people can get access to liquidity or print more money in order. So Really the only way out of this situation is to increase the velocity of money directly by moving to real-time settlement through these blockchain networks and protocols. That's really the only way that they're going to be able to generate real GDP and growth to be able to pull ourselves out of this, death spiral that we're currently on the trajectory for. But back to the BOJ, I'm hopeful that they raise rates at the meeting here in April. An emergency meeting or an unscheduled meeting by the Bank of Japan where they came out and changed monetary policy would be unprecedented. That has never happened by the Bank of Japan. So, not saying that it can't happen. There's lots of things that have happened over the last 5-6 years that are unprecedented, that have never happened before. But all that being said, it's more likely that they would come out at a normal meeting and affect monetary policy unless there's an absolute crisis where things are going very poorly, very quickly, and they would have to act. And that's a situation where, a certain digital asset might come into play. We've got Mohammed. How are you, sir? He says, if trillions flow through USD Japan in a big reverse carry trade unwind via XRP, who is buying the XRP on the Japan side and supplying the JPY? Is it mainly SBI and ODL market makers? And how could that happen without major strain on local yen liquidity? Oh, there's gonna be strain on local yen liquidity, for sure. The FX markets can't handle the volume of money rushing back all at the same time. And that's why the Fed and Warren Buffett have both taken large positions in the yen in order to be a liquidity provider in that circumstance when it plays out. Here's an interesting statistic that I read right before we got on here. Warren Buffett has $373 billion in cash and cash equivalents sat on the sideline. That's enough to buy 480 of the companies in the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is made up of 500 companies, by the way, if you didn't know. 480 of those. Warren Buffett could buy, what is that? There's only 20 companies left. Would be, 500, so 5 would be 1%. So he would be able to buy 96% of the S&P 500 with $373 billion, which is what he currently has in cash and cash equivalents. That is wild. There has never been a moment in history where he's had that much liquidity sat on the sidelines waiting for a liquidity crisis. Because that's the only reason you'd have that much money there. If you are a lender of last resort and you're going to be providing liquidity in that circumstance, and obviously you want to pick up distressed deals, like that's the whole premise behind what they do in the game that they've played over the last, 70 years. We're at a wild time in U.S. history. But back to the question here, focusing on the exchange between the USD and JPY. You have RLUSD, and if you had a couple Japanese stable coins, that might be the way to facilitate that at scale through XRP. Now, SBI could, use that as a liquidity buffer in the FX market. They control about 10% of the FX market there in Japan. Big player, but not the whole thing. So if they were to start to adapt XRP or adopt XRP in that circumstance, I think the others would follow very quickly. Yoshitaka Kitao is a huge advocate for XRP and the XRPL and Ripple and R3 and the entire ecosystem, really. And so, if him and his team were to start leveraging XRP, I think that other banks in that jurisdiction would follow. And he's already stated that before. He believes that all the banks in Japan will run on the XRPL. So I think that what you're discussing is a major catalyst for adoption for XRP when that circumstance plays out. We've got Patrick McGuire, MD4. Thank you for the super chat, my man. I don't see a question, but I appreciate the support. Dave, he says, hey Jake, new Mastermind social member. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the group. Been following your lives for quite a while as well on TikTok. Any idea when Fidelity will expand their crypto? Depends on what you're talking about. They currently provide institutional custody for Bitcoin, ETH, and USDC. I'm assuming you're talking about providing custody or other products for other assets that might include XRP or Solana or some of the other blue chip digital assets. I have NDAs, so I can't really talk about the conversations or timeframes that they have talked about in our conversations. But I will say, I don't know what they've stated publicly. I would go look at what they've stated publicly, and you could just defer to that. If I had more liberty to speak on it, I would love to do so, but we do have a product with them. We have a Bitcoin product with Fidelity and 2 Prime, where if you have at least $500,000 in Bitcoin, you can hold it there at Fidelity and you can generate additional Bitcoin. It's kind of like the growth fund for Bitcoin. Normally, in order to be able to participate in this product, you need at least $10 million in Bitcoin. We democratize access that down to $500,000 in Bitcoin. So if you meet those qualifications, you'd like to be able to generate more Bitcoin on your Bitcoin and hold it in institutional custody, we can help you with that. But for those reasons, and again, the conversations I've had, I can't touch on when they will be putting out new products or holding other digital assets. Mr. Shook, good to see you, dude. He says, let's get this party started already. Gonna stay motivated, excited to see your stubbornness come through on the yield. Thank you and the tea lady. Excited, we're working on other solutions for the yield product because we haven't been able to get, the partner that we've had for a long time across the line. We've built the infrastructure, we've done everything to be able to facilitate it. We've got the attorneys and, the tax letters and everything to make sure that it's done the right way legally here in the US. And I think if things work out the way that I'm hopeful they do, we might be the first financial advisor group to ever have institutional DeFi available for our clients. So that's the goal, over the long term. But I'm hoping that happens here in 2026. Pretty sure it will. We already talked about this one. Nice people with super chats. We've got RockCorp. Good to see you, dude. He says, still holding my XRP. Not sure about my sanity. If Hormuz doesn't open by the end of the week, what happens macro-wise? What if the Hormuz opens end of week? Again, the damage is already done. I mean, you can look at oil priced in yen. We're at 18,400 yen per barrel. That's, let me look at the total chart here. Over 10 years, it's never been this high over a 10-year chart. Now, I can't go back further than that on the chart that I'm looking at, so it's possible that it's been this high at some point in the past. But over the past 10 years, we are at the highest point that the yen has ever traded against. Well, not the highest point, the lowest point, I guess. The least value the yen has had against oil in recent history over the last 10 years. So, again, I don't think it matters if they open the Strait of Hormuz at the end of the week. Shipping lanes are still going to be closed and delayed for a significant period of time. And I do think that oil and inflation will continue higher. It's too far gone at this point. They're going to have to act. Mr. Johnson says the reverse carry trade is not all that can happen. Patrick Bet David actually knew what your abbreviation was here. I had a guest who said if we are still in the Gulf in mid-April at 9 to 11% global supply shortage will hit, and it's 2008 or COVID level bad for everyone. What do you say? I would agree with him, and that's what I'm saying. The Fed needs to come out and lower interest rates, but if they do, inflation's going to be worse. They're backed into a corner. The only lever that they can't pull any of the two levers that they normally have, which is print or reduce money or increase or reduce interest rates. They have to be able to affect the velocity of money directly, which is normally a secondary effect of either one of those two. If you print more money, people have access to liquidity and they buy stuff, and more money moves around the economy, and people tend to take a little more risk with their money. Same thing with banks. They tend to, open up their lending standards a little bit. If you raise interest rates or lower interest rates, it does kind of the same thing as printing more money or reducing money, but inversely correlated there. So with the migration to real-time settlement on chain for the back end of the stock market, daily payments for your paycheck, other stuff, that's going to spur people to spend more money. You're going to feel wealthier. If you got paid every single day instead of once every 2 weeks, well, that money's going to move more frequently, because what do you do when you get paid? You pay all your bills, you go out, you have some drinks, you do all that stuff. But if you got paid every day, you're probably going to be apt to spend that money more quickly. If you don't have monetary financial discipline, it's probably not a good thing. But all that being said, I think that that's the only lever that they have left. And I would agree with this gentleman that, the credit funds halting withdrawals is a big deal, like a big deal. It is the canary in the coal mine. It is showing that we are on the precipice of a financial collapse and huge defaults and bankruptcies and a deflationary depression. If they don't implement this technology aggressively in the near future, it's going to be a bad situation for, like he said, everyone. Presto says, Jake, I have purchased XRP from 4 different platforms at high and low prices, then moved all of it into a cold wallet. How do I figure out my dollar cost average? All right, we're going to do some math. So you have 4 different price points in which you purchased at. You're going to average that out as a percentage of, what's the right way to do this? So I would take each allotment and figure out your cost basis for it. I would figure out what percentage of the total amount of XRP you have, and then I would multiply that percentage by the purchase price or the cost basis, and then I would add all that together, and it should give you an average purchase price, depending on what percentage was what. You're gonna have to do some math. The easiest way to do this would be to use an LLM. If you said, hey, please calculate my cost basis, an average cost basis across all of these purchases. Now, you actually just want to know the 4 different buys that you made and what price points, because when you do the accounting for the selling, if you do that, it's going to be FIFO, so first in, first out. So you're going to be selling the highest one first if you do make a sale, which if you bought, the longest that you have further, in the past was a higher price point, you might be selling at a loss today. If you wanted to restart that clock, if it's less than a year and you're planning on holding it more than a year and you want to be able to leverage long-term capital gains, you might just go ahead and sell and buy back and use the crypto doesn't have a wash rule. So you could be able to capitalize those losses that you already have in those positions and standardize your cost basis across your entire bag. Up to you. But when you do go to sell in the future, if you don't do that, you're going to, take however much you bought at the higher basis, and that's what you're going to be using for, what you're selling. So if you sold all of that plus a little bit more, whenever you do take an exit, you're going to have to factor in the next tranche in its cost basis when you do your taxes and do the accounting. So if you wanted to consolidate, like I said, if you're already down on your positions and you wanted to lock in capital losses, if you haven't been holding for a year, again, not giving you financial advice, I'm just talking about a couple different options here on what you could do to be able to, simplify that for yourself. If you did want to sell your positions and buy back, obviously there's exchange cost in there. It's going to be a couple percentage points either way. You're going to end up with less than what you had, but you're going to absolutely know your new cost basis, and it's going to be lower than what your cost basis was before. And you're going to have those capital losses that you can roll forward against capital gains. So hopefully you're working with a CPA and accountant that understands this stuff. If you're not, you can always reach out to Digital Ascension Group, and we have people on staff and partners to help you file your taxes correctly and mitigate taxes. The House Junkie says, hi Jake, if the reverse carry trade unwinds and BlackRock still doesn't have an XRP spot ETF, will price come back down till BlackRock gets their ETF? Look, I say that other people don't know more than me. Again, I've had enough conversations with enough people to really kind of understand the sequence of events that's going to play out. And for the reverse carry trade to unwind and BlackRock not roll their ETF or roll their ETF right before the reverse carry trade unwinds, it'll be in or around when that happens. Worst case scenario, you're talking about a worst case scenario is really what you're talking about. You're talking about a situation where we plunge into a global depression, which I don't believe they're going to allow to happen. They need to drive liquidity into XRP when all this happens in order to be able to mitigate the situation and pull us out of the hole that we're going to be in. So it's not really a paradigm or reality that I even entertain what you just mentioned there, because I believe that it is an absolute necessity for them to roll that out either prior to or during when the reverse carry trade is unwinding. Otherwise, we're screwed. Kent Manning says, been listening for years. I have a situation where I have a few small businesses, LLCs, and I used the profits to DCA around $100 a day. How should proceed with this situation? LLC owns the crypto. Help. That's actually not a bad thing if it's an LLC that owns the crypto. I don't know what type of LLCs or businesses you have. Depending on the risk profile of those businesses, you may want to segregate those assets out, and you could use that crypto to fund a new LLC that's either owned or managed by those corporations. I would segregate the assets just like you would if you run a service business that requires equipment. You would want one LLC that owns the equipment that you're using to service the clients with, and you'd have another service company, and you would rent the trucks. And let's say you're a lawn care person, you would rent the trucks and the mowers and the weed eaters and all of that stuff to the other service business. And if something bad happens, your guy rear ends somebody that cut a water line, or somebody sues you, because there's situations where that's going to happen, then you just basically bankrupt that LLC, spin up a new one, lease the assets to the new one, change the name, transfer all the contracts, and move on with your business. That's the whole benefit, is you have limited liability. You don't have personal liability when something goes south. Now, if you have like a business that's just you providing some service that's not really going to put you in a situation where you're going to be in a lawsuit and somebody's going to come after you, you're probably fine to hold the digital assets as a treasury inside that corporation, to allow it to generate dividends, and you can pay yourself, larger quarterly bonuses because of that. There's a lot of different ways to structure it. I would talk with an estate planner that understands small business and crypto on how to get that, set up the best way. I don't know what states your LLCs are in. They may not have good charging order protection. You may want to restructure some of those LLCs in other jurisdictions, depending on what you're doing. They all might be in Delaware. You might be in a good spot, but I don't know, what your specifics around your situation are. So I would recommend that you talk to Dan Plaskett. He is our chief architect and estate planner for Digital Ascension Group. You can email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. Just ask for Dan Plaskett and say, hey, I was the guy that talked to Jake on his live. I've got these businesses. I got some crypto in them, and I want to make sure that I'm doing this the right way. All right. Dan was an attorney in Missouri for a long time, but he's here in Texas now. He was also in Hawaii. Very interesting background. Very blessed to have Dan on our team. We got Gmain50. He says, would it make sense for them to start the reverse carry trade at the top of alt season for max XRP liquidity and proper market downturn narrative? Once markets dump, repo liquidity could kick in April. Possible. I don't know what would drive liquidity into crypto outside of them launching the ETFs before the reverse carry trade unwound, right? Like I just mentioned, there might be a situation where they want to be proactive instead of reactive in that situation, or might feel like they can't get to market fast enough if, you know, they're on their back foot. They've already been proactive with all the other things that I've said that they were going to do. This is just kind of the last cliff note and domino that's kind of overhanging here. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of ETFs that all come to the market at the same time, including BlackRock's ETFs for XRP. Could that happen in April? Could it happen in May? Could it be in June? That's kind of the latest that I think it would happen, would be June. I think it's probably sooner than that, but it could take that long. Just depends on, you know, how things play out here with the conflict in the Middle East. So, you know, I'm watching the next 3-4 months. April, May, June, July. Those are the 4 months that I'm watching. And hopefully you guys are watching them too. Lenners has posted the discount code for the LLC here. If you want to wait till Monday, it's going to be $1,500 instead of $2,000. We are going to lower that a little bit, but it is $100 a month after that, you know, for the corporate veil. So that's a little more expensive. You know, you pay a little less on the front end, pay a little more for the renewal service and the corporate veil and the other stuff that we're providing in the app there. Again, if you want early access to that, you can join the mastermind. We've provided a waiting list or code in there for those that are in that community to get access to the app middle of this week before everybody else does next week on Monday. And if you want to join the mastermind, just go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. Truth of Heart says, isn't Yoshi so cute? Eyeball improved too. All right. This is very nice. Thank you. I appreciate the coffee cup. It's very large, by the way. This is a big mug. This is a big coffee cup. You can see the size of my head. A lot of liquid in that cup. Magari, 2352. Thank you for the super chat. They say, hey Jake, 24 from Australia, no kids, no spouse, 50,000 XRP. What trust structure do you suggest here in Australia? Thoughts on different offshore trusts, moving to a zero tax jurisdiction, post price appreciation, any bonus estate advice would be great. Thanks, Legend. Appreciate you, dude. That's actually a really good question. So if you're, you know, you have no kids, you give me good context here, by the way, which I appreciate. Can't give you financial advice. I can't give you estate planning advice. I can just tell you what I would do in your position, or the choices that I would be looking at. Probably the choices I'd be looking at. So I'd be looking at Singapore. I'd be looking at Dubai, and you know, you may have family there in Australia. So the benefit of having a lot of money is that you get to choose where you live. Most of the people that used to live in California or other jurisdictions that moved to Puerto Rico, you either love it or you hate it and you move back. It's one or the other. There's almost nobody in the middle. The infrastructure there in Puerto Rico, even though it's a 4% flat tax and no corporate tax, not great. Because they don't have any taxes, their infrastructure is pretty garbage, and unless you have a lot of money for backup generators and, you know, geothermal heating and your ability to rebuild your compound after a hurricane. It's very expensive now to live in Puerto Rico also. Dubai is cheap right now with everything that's going on in the Middle East. We've seen Dubai's real estate drop about 40% from where it was at the top of the market. That's probably where I would be looking if I was Australian and 24 with no kids and no spouse and a decent bag of XRP. Just because, I mean, you have all the benefits that you have there in Australia, also, you know, there in Dubai. And you can still come back to Australia for a certain number of days per year. The UK, New Zealand, Australia, and a couple other jurisdictions that are part of the Commonwealth are all subject to similar tax regimes. And I don't remember what the total number of days is, but as long as you don't spend more than that number of days in the country, they can't tax you. because each one of those jurisdictions is residency tax based, not citizen tax based like we are here in the U.S. So, if you wanted to go stay in Dubai for the majority of the year, but you still want to come home for the holidays and spend some time with your family there in Australia, you absolutely could. If you want to stay there in Australia, I would look at a family trust. Or, we've got some people that have set stuff up offshore in BVI or British Virgin Islands. That's another popular jurisdiction for those there in Australia. You lose a lot of control if you do it that way versus moving yourself out of that jurisdiction. And structuring things, where there's better tax benefits. This person says 183 days a year. There you go. So as long as you're not spending more than 183 days a year there in Australia, they're not going to tax you there. You can live in other jurisdictions, and you'll be good to go. So that's what I would probably be doing if I was your age with no kids. And, Dubai is a great place to go. It's super safe. Well, not right now, just with everything going on. Prior to this, it was super safe, and I do think that the real estate there is going to appreciate in value substantially on the other side of this conflict being resolved. So, buying now or on the other side of price appreciation for XRP, probably not a bad choice. It's definitely something I'm going to be looking at post-price appreciation. All right, we've got DAS, U.S. Marine Corps. They say, hey, Jake, thanks for all that you do. Could you play devil's advocate on stablecoin sandwiches with ROUSD between fiat and turning XRP into a gas token? So devil's advocate. Okay, so let's say nobody else issues stablecoins on the XRPL. It's just Ripple, okay? And even ROUSD doesn't completely operate on the XRPL. The majority of the ROUSD is issued on Ethereum. So really the whole premise behind XRP is that multiple stablecoins would be issued on the same network and have a ton of trading volume between those. And you would need a neutral bridge asset to be able to settle between all of those counterparties that had issued those issued assets or stablecoins on that network. Right now, we just have ROUSD, and we've got the Brazilian real. There's a lot of volume between those two that's settling through XRP. And then you've got, Bitcoin and a few other assets that are wrapped. Fidelity just issued their stablecoin, FIDD. You got PayPal stablecoin. I don't know what networks those are issued on. I'd have to look to see if they're interoperable with the XRPL. But, again, like I talked about, that X402 standard for AI agents to be able to transact across the XRPL, that's a big deal. But it's also integrated with Base and Solana. So, again, I could advocate for either side. I have enough knowledge to know that XRP is going to be used at scale, because if it's not, they're just going to exacerbate the Nostro Vostro accounts because of all the stable coins that are going to be issued. You need one central intermediary to be able to exchange those so that you're not having to pre-fund accounts. But, devil's advocate, nobody issues stable coins on the XRPL. It's just ROUSD. And, Ripple continues to operate in the capacity that they have been without rolling that out across G Treasury and Hidden Road, which I completely believe that they will do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made those acquisitions. So, again, anybody that's telling you that stuff, they're looking at the surface level of what's going on today. They're not looking at stablecoin volume in the next 3 to 5 years and how to solve the Nostro Vostro problem that currently exists today, or market infrastructure, or other tokenized assets or financial products, or markets being tokenized. They're not looking at any of that stuff. And so if the status quo were to maintain right now, sure, yeah, not going to see the adoption. But if all those other things transpire that I just talked about, we'll see huge institutional adoption at scale for XRP and the XRPL. And I do think, according, again, this is according to Monica Long, that happens here in 2026. If you like this stuff and you want to know more about what we're doing, you can use this code here, Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, get you the first month there in the mastermind for $2. We are going to be locking the mastermind down on the other side of price appreciation. It will be invite only. If you want to get in before that's the thing. I would highly recommend going ahead and, again, I'm watching the next couple months here. I think things are in a very precarious position, and at some point there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back, and we're going to see things move the direction that I've been talking about. We got Toro. They say, good night, Jake. You have repeatedly suggested that XRP, once XRP starts to appreciate, that it would go parabolic and go anywhere from 3 to 4 digits. Seems dramatic. Have you seen this type of movement before? We have seen this type of movement before. So if you want to go back and look at the chart, as a percentage move on a logarithmic scale, okay, so you're going to have to, not a linear scale like everybody tends to look at for their charts. If you go look at a logarithmic scale on the chart back in 2017, 2018, when we saw the meteoric rise of XRP in late 2017 into early 2018, that's the type of move I'm expecting on XRP to push to 3 to 4 digits in a very short period of time. It's a percentage move, not a nominal move, a percentage move based on supply and demand dynamics. We saw a supply and demand shock back in 2017, 2018 when Ripple locked up half of the supply. That's when we saw significant price appreciation on the asset. So if we have another supply shock because there's not enough liquidity on OTC desk and dark pools and all of the volume for ETFs and the exchanges all need XRP at the same time, that's when there's going to be a big move, and it's going to be parabolic, and you're going to see something similar to what happened in late 2017 on a logarithmic scale. So the answer is yes. Mr. Luther, he says, yo, Jake, what happens when Clarity passes and Ripple has to lose 80% of the XRP escrow XRP price? So a couple of different things there. I'm still not positive that Clarity is even going to get passed this year. So that's number one. If it does get passed, I think it's going to happen in the next 2 months. And even then, as it's written, Ripple would have 12 months in order to get to that 20% ownership that you're talking about. They currently don't own 100% of the supply. They own a little less than 50% of the supply in the escrow. They would have to give up the wallets that the escrows are going to be delivered to other counterparties. And they could do that from force majeure to the U.S. government. They could give it to the IMF. They could also give it to other banks or intermediaries that have pre-negotiated contracts on those amounts of XRP that they haven't executed yet. There's a lot of ways that they could make those transfers that have maybe already been predetermined for that situation when it plays out. So, all that being said, I don't know if the Clarity Act's even going to happen. We'll see in the next 2 months. But if it does, like I said, Ripple has a full year to get right on the other side of that. Just like Tether has 3 years somehow to get their stuff together for a US dollar denominated stablecoin. And yet, it's obvious that they plan not to do that because they've issued a completely separate stablecoin called UST. This person says, when BIS designations? It's a great question. We have 4 designations coming out for different digital assets here in Q2 of 2026. I've said for a long time that the BIS would designate XRP a tier 1 asset. But a couple things have to be true for that to happen. We need a high and stable price for XRP before we're going to get that designation from the BIS. So, maybe we get that here in Q2 and they designate it a tier 1 asset, but they're also going to be regulating Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum here in the next 3 months. So definitely on pins and needles watching for that. I don't know when exactly that's going to transpire. We got AWAGS16. They say, Carbon 2 member, good to see you. Cue the discount code. Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, which is the first month for $2 there in the group. He said, you've talked about price appreciation going straight to $100 plus if XRP ramps up on a smaller scale first. Wouldn't something like $10 be realistic before any major pump? There's no bids at $10 unless people have limit orders to sell at $10, which are few and far between. You've already seen the chart gap up a couple different times because there's not enough liquidity. It's just air in the order book up until $90 or $100. That's why we saw that jump happen on Kraken to like $91. We also saw an upbit that it went to $100 for a short period of time. That's the gap in the order book. So when I say the chart's going to gap up past those prices, it's not because I'm guessing, okay? Like, there are actual situations where that has already taken place, and there's a precedent set for it, just like, potential sanction for Tether. There's precedent that's been set for it. It's not just a fugazi or something I made up. I know a lot of people think that these order books operate like stocks, right? Or there's, AMMs or automatic market makers that will take a bid at any price. That's not the case. Some of these order books are very thin. And this whole asset class is less than $3 trillion. Seems like a lot of money, but in perspective, gold got up to $30 trillion. So 10 times larger. Now it's pulled back since then. But at one point, it was $30 trillion as an asset class. That is wild. The whole crypto market is nothing. It's the smallest asset class that it exists out there in any form of traditional finance at all. So all that being said, that's why there's illiquidity, that's why there's thin order books, and that's why that situation's possible for XRP to move to those prices aggressively once it gets going. King of Vienna. Probably butchered that. He says Proppy actually does property tokenizations. So they do, and they're buying title companies. I know Natalia. I've met her multiple times. Have her email, talked to her plenty. They are actually tokenizing the properties. Unfortunately, and they do a really good job of a 1031 exchange on their marketplace. I'll say that. So if you're looking for a 1031 exchange on tokenized property, you're looking to list your property as a tokenized property for sale, they have a great deal for that. Unfortunately, until Congress or a regulatory body says that these tokenized representations of value, these digital titles, are legal recourse in a court setting, it's going to be the physical title and deed that are what you need in that situation in order to be able to maintain ownership of a property. I think that there could be, a situation where somebody does have a digital title that ends up in a lawsuit, and that precedent is set in court versus, with Congress, very similar to how XRP was given the designation of, not a security through the court system before, it was actually labeled a commodity by the CFTC. Something similar could happen. We could have case law around that, but I don't think you're going to see big players move and start issuing, tokenized titles or digital titles of representation until we have full clarity from Congress or, like I said, a higher regulatory body that states that. But yeah, Proppy is great. Again, full support to Natalia and what she's doing. If you know a title company that's looking to sell, they are looking for title companies to acquire. So, reach out, let them know. And if you run a title company, if you're watching this and you run a title company, you want to tokenize the titles in whatever jurisdiction you run your title company in, they would love to work with you, I promise. So reach out, have those conversations. And the more people that we have doing that, the closer we're going to get and the faster that's going to happen. TikTok trying to get me to verify. There we go. Presto. He says, do you have 3 or 4 reputable individuals that strongly agree with your domino theory? Also, how do the majority of employees at DAG support your theory? I would say yes on the 3 to 4 individuals. I'm not going to name, it sounds stupid. People were nice enough to reach out to me and validate that theory early on and, more recently. And I don't feel it appropriate to share their credentials or who they are here publicly. Now, I've talked a few times about it in the mastermind, so you can go ask those people there, and they're probably going to share at least a couple of those individuals that might, provide credibility that you're looking for. Separate of that, the employees at DAG. So, a couple things. I have built the business around the idea that this is going to happen. Like, I could not have bet bigger that this was going to happen. Caveat to that, all the people that I've hired and that work for us, and some have equity and like they crush it. I just promoted Aaron to CEO. We've got a couple other large players coming on here in the next few weeks that we're going to be making PR announcements about. Pretty excited about that. They are building a business that doesn't require this to happen for XRP. But they're also building a business that's in position to be able to handle this appreciation at scale when it does happen. So, day-to-day management, their focus is making sure that they're executing on the mission that we currently have, and continue to provide our clients the service at scale that we're known for. But in addition to that, positioning ourselves to be able to expand and provide a higher level of service and other products and services post-price appreciation to a larger majority of our client base, not just the 10 family offices we work with today. So all that being said, some of them are, I would say the general consensus is probably like 70-30. They believe, they've seen me continually double down and understand what's going on and not lose faith and explain ad nauseum, that this is going to happen and play out. But they're just like everybody else. They're a little bit skeptical. I'd say my wife is probably, I don't know, maybe she's probably 70-30 at this point. There's still probably 30% of doubt in my wife's mind that this plays out the way that I've talked about. And I'd say the majority of our employees are probably that way too, right? But all that being said, like, they haven't made this bet on this outcome, right? They came to work at this company. They have strong fiduciary duty. They have the credentials. They're professionals. They're able to provide all these services to our clients at today's prices, irrespective of price appreciation. But obviously, they believe in the vision. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to work here either, right? So, yeah. And again, if you want to, hear about those 3 or 4 reputable individuals, you could join the mastermind, and I'm sure some people there might be willing to share some things that I've shared in the past. J-Bone works. They say, any 3-digit prediction with what's going on currently in the world. Let's go. Thank you for the super chat. And again, supply shock. If you need Tether sanctioned, you need a Bitcoin ETF, you need a reverse carry trade to unwind in an emergency situation. All of that plays out. You're definitely going to see a 3 or 4 digit XRP. We got Crypto Beginners, Australia, 8451, with the 589 super chat. Thank you. He says, hey Jake, what's your view on TLC, Litecoin, and ETH? Do you come across anyone you talk with using or building on them? Not financial advice, just opinions. Thanks for all that you do. We were just at ETH Denver, and there's still a lot of people that are building things on ETH. Even Vitalik has come out at this point and said that, nothing's going to scale if it has a bunch of layer 2s. It needs to be the layer 1 that has things built into it to be able to facilitate, global commerce at scale, and get the adoption for market transactions and everything else that we're hopeful for. And that's why I think XRP and the XRPL have an edge, because of the institutional amendments and the way that things are structured on that network. But as far as Litecoin and ETH go, they both have ETFs at this point. I do think that they'll be around and participate in some capacity. Will they have the same price appreciation as some of the other assets? I don't think so. I think that they've already had pretty significant runs depending on when you got in those assets. If you got an ETH at $1 or whatever it was when they sold it at the ICO and you had to swap your Bitcoin for it, you've done really, really well. Litecoin, if you got in, when they first minted it early on, you've probably done very, very well. Both of those have had greater returns than XRP over the duration that they've been around. I think XRP will catch up, and it will also surpass both of those in appreciation for the current values that they sit at today. I think that XRP will be the number 1 digital asset over the long term. Does that take another couple years? Probably 2028, 2029 when XRP will be the #1 digital asset and pass Bitcoin. Could there be some volatility where, I mean, really you only need like a $7 or $10 XRP for the market cap of XRP to be greater than Bitcoin, to be honest with you. So if it goes to the numbers that I'm talking about, it will absolutely pass Bitcoin as the #1 digital asset with the most liquidity. So anyway, back to ETH and Litecoin. I don't hang out in those circles, so it would be hard to say yes or no on that. I can tell you that ETH Denver this year was significantly less people, but it's a bear market. There was a lot more signal than noise there at ETH Denver this year. There are still people that are building NFTs and doing some, people showing up in Pikachu outfits and crazy stuff. But there were a lot more suits. There's a lot more people that are real professionals that are moving into the space, and that's exciting for me to see that adoption. Franklin Templeton made an acquisition earlier this week of a wealth management firm, and I think that's just the beginning. I think you're going to see some of these other larger financial institutions buy up crypto native RIAs or people building unique things in the space. We don't plan on being on that list in the near future, but I do think that there will be others that are bought up. This gentleman says, legend. Appreciate you, dude. To be honest, I'm scared. You told me you didn't want to talk about Metallicus because I'd be disappointed. I have over 5,000 XRP. Ooh. In Metallicus, please, I beg you, tell me if I should withdraw them because it's dangerous company. If I can leave them alone, give me a sign. I mean, I think I gave you a pretty obvious sign last time. Again, they come out in force and get very upset in the past when I've talked about Metallicus. You're not going to like what I have to say about it. You make your own financial decisions. Again, I would love to be completely wrong. I would love everybody that's invested in that token to make a lot of money. There's just a lot of background stuff that's going on that you might want to look into. And then you can make your own decisions. Again, in business, there's going to be transactions that go wrong. People are going to be upset. People are going to sue you. Right? That's just part of doing business at a high level. But for me personally, it's not anything that I will be parking my XRP in or participating in. It's too much risk for me. I'll say it that way. Jayhawk Nation, he says, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, what's up, dude? Appreciate all the knowledge that you have shared with the community. Our original goal was 4,000 XRP back 13 months ago, and now we're in the top 1.5%. Looking forward to joining DWP. Thank you. Excited to be working with you, dude. See, so that's pretty cool. There's almost some prestige, in order to be a client with Digital Wealth Partners, because you have to have 50,000 XRP. It's not like it's a small amount of XRP in order to just qualify in order to be a client. We still don't work with everybody. Not everybody's a good fit to be able to work with us at Digital Ascension Group and Digital Wealth Partners. We work with cool people. We work with people we want to work with. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. So, excited for you to be in that demographic, to be able to work with us, and excited for the conversation on what we can do to provide services for you and your family and continue to grow and cultivate a relationship as your wealth grows, so that you have generational wealth. Rick Johnson, Versan, talked to Versan today. He said tokenization and fractional ownership are the very definition of you will own nothing and be happy. Tyranny? What do you say, Oracle of DAG? He's not wrong. Look, Agenda 2030 is you will own nothing and be happy. Most people in 2030 will live on UBI. AI agents at that point will have there will be a huge agentic economy. Blockchain and other protocols will have been adopted at scale in multiple capacities and be integrated into your everyday life. You'll be paid on a much faster cadence. Your access to things will be substantially greater. Software will be completely disintermediated. SaaS products are gone 2030. Everybody and anybody will be able to vibe code using AI to build any application that you want real time. And it'll be curated specific to you and what you want to do with it. I think the mode in which we communicate and also your mobile phone will probably be different by 2030. I think that we may have glasses or contacts or something else that you are, using to interact with augmented reality on a daily basis. It's a huge shift in the next 5 years from what it is today. So, when you're talking about Agenda 2030 and own nothing, be happy type deal, a lot of it is that. The other side of this, which is unfortunate, but I do think it's the reality that we're moving into, and I hope I'm wrong about this, by the way. I don't want to be right about a lot of these things. I'm a realist, and people would say I'm an optimist. I could also go with the optimist route, but as far as, technologies and the technological advancement over the duration that we're moving into, I think it's going to be expedited in comparison to how it's been in the past. Now, I still may think it happens faster than it really does, which I'm, guilty of that. But all that being said, I think most people will be on UBI. I think that there will be a caste society. I think that there will be an upper echelon of people, and there'll be a couple of different sects, depending on your wealth of your family and, your lineage. And you'll be kind of stuck in whatever caste part of the system that you're in. So those that own a lot of crypto, you're probably going to be in the very wealthy class. People that are here right now listening to this, you're probably going to do really well. And hopefully, there's enough of us at the table that we can speak for the common person and help them out and make sure that there's not so much disparity between the wealthy and those that are not wealthy, that people still have opportunity to be able to ascend through those classes, and it's not a fixed system. There are other places in the world where it is a fixed system, and if you marry down, you're looked down upon, or if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in those cultural norms, you become an outcast. This person says it's already here. A little bit. There's still some time. Until AI is at scale and the markets don't have the volatility that they have today, there's still going to be ways to make money in a very short period of time. A lot of money in a very short period of time. On the other side of the implementation of AI and these protocols, there's going to be a significant regression to the mean. Now, markets will move up into the right over the long term, but the volatility that you're experiencing and the ability to harvest that volatility and generate additional returns is going to be significantly truncated. And so, you have a moment in time right now for probably the next 6 months to really take advantage of, the financial infrastructure that exists as this transition takes place. On the other side of the next 6 to 12 months, I think it's going to be very difficult to make a lot of money in a very short period of time, unless you are creating a startup or business that disintermediates an entire industry. Those that are taking advantage of AI or other progressive technologies and using those to disrupt larger players and take market share, sure, you can make money very quickly. But as far as investments go, 6 to 12 months, I think, is really the time horizon to go hard if you're going to do that. Again, not financial advice, can't give you that. That's just what I'm doing personally. Where are we at on time? We'll hang out for another 15 minutes or so here, and then we're going to wrap it up. Again, excited for the app drop on Monday next week. We've had this a long time coming. Super excited to be working with Uphold to provide you guys a business bank account, money market debit card, credit card. All those things are coming. We're launching with just the bank account and the exchange to begin with. You'll be able to manage your LLC right there in the app. All the corporate veil services and everything else. Some of that will be coming over the next 30 days also. But this is one unified application that streamlines everything for you if you are one of our clients. And, again, super excited for that. And again, if you want in on the early beta, we'd love to have you in the mastermind. You can learn more and get on the waiting list if that sounds cool to you. They say, legend. What's up, dude? What are the chances Elon is bearable guy? Rocket ship, National Beer Day tomorrow. I could go on and on. We must be getting close. I mean, the SEC hand was giving, some beers to Garlinghouse out there on the moon with his bagpipes. I don't know. There have been so many dates that have come and gone, and nothing has happened. You would have hoped that it would have been the Chinese calendar. You would have hoped that it would have been April Fools. You would have hoped that it would have been on Lucius. Like there's a couple more New Years this year that could meet that criteria for the depiction that you mentioned with Bearable Guy and Elon. Again, I'm just watching the next 3 to 4 months here. I feel like there's too much friction in the system for something to not crack and move. And maybe it'll be Satoshi. Maybe Satoshi dumps his Bitcoin. Right? Like, again, black swan stuff out of left field, things that people don't expect. That's kind of the stuff that I'm expecting in the next 3 to 4 months. Triple Lindy Trader. She says, I just opened an LLC with Laughlin. Please advise. If you paid them directly, you could transfer it to us. That's not a problem. If you paid us for the annual renewal, we are happy to honor that. If you just set it up, you will get an email from us to be able to migrate it over. Super simple. You don't have to worry about it. It's not like your renewal is coming up anytime soon. So later this week, you should get that email, and I would just, again, download the app in the beta, or when it goes live Monday, and you'll be able to upload your documents and get rolling very easily. So again, sad to separate from them. They were a good partner, but unfortunately, again, like I said earlier, sometimes things in business don't work out. This person says, hey Jake, thank you for all the advice. Do you think Evernorth Armada could share dividends? Possible. There's a lot of, I think that they'll raise debt at the market, very similar to what MicroStrategy's done. I think that they'll do it a little bit more responsibly, but there may be some options or things that you get when you participate in those lending structures. Owning the stock outright and then paying a dividend, they're definitely going to be producing, or compounding the XRP through DeFi protocols and other ways that they're going to be putting it to work. So all that being said, it's possible. I don't know what their intent is. Actually, I need to reach out, talk to them. But yeah, that's, until the S4 is approved by the SEC, I don't know exactly what we could expect by them. If you wanted to go read the S4, I'm pretty sure that they're going to denote whether they're going to be paying dividends in that filing with the SEC. So I'd have to go look at that in order to be able to tell you one way or the other. 3D G-Man says, JC, Beyond Broke Mastermind, domain, webpage, email, LLC, bank account, DWP. Did you say the Digital Wealth Partners product app launches Monday the 13th? Will it allow in-kind transfers to an Anchorage account? So again, this is frustrating for me to say, but in the short term, DWP, Digital Wealth Partners, will be separate of the app that we're launching with Uphold. If you want Anchorage institutional custody and you have at least 50,000 XRP, Digital Wealth Partners would love to work with you. If you don't have 50,000 XRP and you want reduced trading fees, you want a streamlined service, this is that application, right? So a lot of people don't have 50,000 XRP, but they still want to work with us in some capacity. They want access to the products and stuff that we're going to be rolling out. They want access to yield and returns and all these other things that we are going to be rolling out at scale over the next 6 to 12 months to all of our clients. And we're going to unify the app where you will have the visibility of both your accounts at Anchorage and at Uphold and a few other custodians here in 2026. So the answer is not at launch. You won't have that capability, but in the next 3 to 6 months, yes, you will. The Duke, he says, legend. What's up, dude? 2 questions. How desperate is Japan if the Prime Minister is reaching out to both Iran and US today for talks? They're backed into a corner. Second, once price appreciation happens, can the US control inflation easier with XRP in real time? Yes. So if the velocity of money picks up, they can reduce into money supply aggressively. Now, if there's a significant deflationary event, they might want to actually lower interest rates and print more money. And that sounds counterintuitive to the position that we're currently in. But if you could increase the velocity of money, the amount of times, that dollar's changing hands across the economy, that would add additional inflation to the economy. And depending on how big the deflationary collapse was, as that credit and liquidity sucked out of the market from the reverse carry trade, there's going to be a complete repricing. So in order to maintain price stability with that deflationary pressure, you could print money in opposition to that. And especially with AI agents and blockchain infrastructure being rolled out at scale, the cost reduction for production and advancement and GDP, like the cost of goods will come down substantially. But if you wanted to hold those at a reasonable price or maintain a price, if you had an agent that could review all the transactions across an economy, which I'm pretty sure Palantir does, or Aladdin, they could figure out how to allocate that and incentivize or disincentivize spending in certain sectors of the economy with the UBI that they're going to be passing out to people. Again, I don't agree with all this. This is just what I see for writing on the wall. Would love to be wrong about it, but that's how I think things are going to go. So anyway, yeah, I do think Japan is hurting, and they are going to have to move here in the near future. And they're just making sure that things are coordinated. Again, I think the missing link here in the U.S. is the full alignment on how the yields are going to be paid on stablecoins. And as soon as the banks and exchanges are like good to go on that, then they can let it roll. This person says, happy Easter weekend, Nostradamus of North Texas. Not looking for advice, just a quick opinion. HBAR or Quant, long-term buy. Thanks. HBAR, I understand why it will be valuable over the long term. I've talked about a 4-digit HBAR over the long term. People make videos about it. They think I'm crazy. Call me crazy. It's fine. When I'm right, I won't be crazy. Delusional is only delusional till it works. Now, Quant could easily be 4 digits, okay? However, I don't see what the value proposition of Quant really is. You use it to pay fees on the network in order to be able to participate with Overledger. It doesn't actually move value across the network. So sustained volume and demand is going to have to be solely predicated on people needing it to pay their fees to participate on the network. And if enough people were using it at scale, there'll be sustained volume and demand there. I just don't think it's going to be anywhere near the volume and demand that you're going to see for HBAR or some of these other networks for facilitating transactions at scale. So, all that being said, I personally made a bunch of money on Quant. I bought Quant at $7 because I heard it on a video from Kevin Cage back in the day. Did really well on it. Sold it at a couple $100. Or actually, it was around 170. 170 is when I sold it. So, look, I made my money on it. Is there more money to be made on it? Probably. HBAR, I think, you said long term. I think HBAR probably has more ROI than Quant over the long term. Again, personal bias, personal opinion. There's lots of people that would argue the other way. You could go listen to Baggins on Twitter. Very intelligent individual, by the way, works in this industry. Very credible. He believes Quant's fantastic. And he apparently understands things about Quant that I do not. So, again, apples and oranges. I would listen to multiple people besides myself in order to figure out, you know, which way to go for you, or maybe you just buy both. Again, diversification is a hedge against ignorance. If you don't know the answer, diversify, and you're probably going to be okay. All right, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to work our way up through the rest of the super chats. We got Darren. He says, "What's up, Jake? What's your view on KETA?" I don't know what KTA is. I have no clue. Let's give it a Google here. KETA crypto. Number 194 on market cap, coin market cap is 17 cents, way down from the all-time high of $1.50. Chart looks good for a move, but I mean, total supply is 1 billion, circulating supply is about 500 million. 24-hour volume is $2.3 million. Anybody that's holding a large amount of this token is not going to be able to liquidate it without screwing everybody else. Total market cap, $88 million. It's not anything I would touch, but again, would love to be wrong. I hope you make a bunch of money on it. It's just not anything that interests me based on the tokenomics that I'm seeing here. Let's see what it's supposed to be used for. Their Twitter page says the most advanced way to move money for humans and AI. Nope. It's not. Sorry. I'm out, because I'm confident that there are multiple other networks that are going to win in that use case, and that's definitely not going to be one of them. Again, just my personal bias and opinion. Do what you want on it. You asked my opinion. I'm just giving it to you. Will and Key Experience says, "Hi, Jake. We live in Melbourne, Australia, and wanted to join Digital Ascension Group. How do we do this, please, mate? Cheers from Australia." Very cool. Love Aussies. Aussies are almost pretty. You guys are pretty much Texans. Like, I don't know if y'all realize that if you've ever been to Texas, but all of the Aussies that I interact with have this like Southern feel, and they're good people, and they want to help others, and they'll hold the door for you, and they have crazy sayings, and like, it's very Southern. So if you haven't been to the U.S., come to Texas. We'll take care of you. You guys would love it here. Separate of that, if you want to join Digital Ascension Group, all you got to do is reach out to us at digitalfamilyoffice.io. If you want to work with the wealth management division, that's going to be at digitalwealthpartners.net. So you can email support at either one of those, support at digitalfamilyoffice.io, or support at digitalwealthpartners with an S, partners.net. Both of those will get you in contact with our customer service team, and they can walk you through the steps in order to be able to participate in whatever capacity you're looking to work with this in. Opinion on ZBEC. I think that they finally got integrated with Hyperledger and backed by the foundation. I think that's going to be used. They're a competitor of like other payment processors and merchant services. Actually, I take that back. That's Stronghold. ZBEC is for real-time payments or daily payments on payroll. It's a small application, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of payroll that's paid bi-weekly. If you look at G Treasury, they're going to be doing liquidity management, cash flow management for their clients. I don't know that they're going to be leveraging ZBEC, but if they do, that would be a huge benefit for that network and that token. I think that there's other assets that have a higher ROI for me personally versus ZBEC, but I have made a video about it if you want to go watch it on the YouTube channel to learn more about what it is and how it works and all of that. I'm very familiar with it. It's just not anything that I personally hold or will be investing in. Bob the Builder. What's up, dude? He says, were you surprised that Franklin Templeton recently set a 6% additional spot ETF? Like, I believe I read 231 million. They're setting the path for others to follow. Seems like they might have some clarity. Franklin Templeton has always been a leader in digital assets. They've made many investments in progressive companies in this industry. They have also created financial products and solutions. What's the nice lady that's at all the conferences that I can't think of her name right now? Their head of digital assets over there, she's brilliant. I've listened to her speak multiple times. Franklin Templeton knows what's up, knows what's coming. They also made an investment in T54, same company that Ripple made an investment in for the AI agents and the governance and trust for AI agents, and basically creating digital identity for AI agents. I think that they're super progressive, and I do think that they're going to be innovative on the ETFs, and other people will likely follow whatever they do. They tend to set the pace. I already did that one. I think I might have gotten to all of the super chats. I'm going to scroll up a little bit more and see. Oh, we got a couple more. Rashid, Mr. Black, he says, hey Jake, not financial advice. Would you roll your ETH to XRP? Thank you. ETH was up in the last 24 hours. Again, can't give you financial advice. I would look at, here, we'll pull up a chart. We're going to do the XRP versus ETH chart. I look at XRP versus Bitcoin all the time. So, let me pull this up here, and I'll share it with you guys. So I look at it on TradingView. I'm going to go to the 1 week, so it's all on one chart, and we can get a better view. I'm also going to make it logarithmic and expand it a little bit here before we pull it up for you guys. Okay. Share screen. I understand. ETH. Share. Show on stream. All right, here it is for you guys. This is the ETH versus, actually XRP versus ETH chart. So you can see that XRP is denominated significantly less than ETH by the amount of XRP it takes, or the amount of ETH that one XRP makes up. Very little amount. Even in the beginning, so this, what I will say about this chart is it's a bit truncated. This is on Binance. Do we have... I'd like to see all the way back to 2014, but unfortunately it only goes back to 2018. I would expect that prior to 2014, we would see, some higher volatility prices in here where XRP was a greater value against Ethereum. You have kind of a descending wedge here, and you've got this building, support above long-term resistance, and at some point it should break out to the upside. So if you think that XRP is going to appreciate against ETH based on this chart, you should probably roll your ETH into XRP. If you think that XRP is going to go down in comparison to ETH from here and retest these lows, probably not a good time to roll. You would want to roll when that happens. So if you think this chart is going this way, it'd probably be a good time to roll it. If you think it's going to go back this way, then you'd want to wait till it was down here so that you could get more XRP for the amount of ETH that you had. So again, can't tell you what to do. That's how I make my decisions. I go look at one asset priced in the other one and look at the chart over time and try to figure out if it's a good time to make that transition between one or the other based on those charts and technicals. Or other fundamentals in the market, right? I'm more of a macro guy versus the TA, but, to each their own. All right. Nancy, thank you for the super chat. I don't know if you guys saw the video with Nancy Beaton that I did a while back. Interviewed her at Uphold. They've got some cool stuff coming out there. They announced a credit card for crypto-backed loans, basically. I do think that that's going to be available originally for Bitcoin and USDC, maybe ETH. And over the long term, obviously, we would like that for XRP. But, until we're able to get a little bit further along with our app, I think we'll get it. Brent, he says, TFH, Trump post video from New York, 1929 crash incoming. He did post that earlier today. It was a colorized version of some video from 1929 in New York during the Roaring 20s. And to your point, that was the year that we saw the stock market crash. So, I mean, if he's trying to tell you, that's a great way to do it. And again, I've been shouting from the rooftops for a long time. There's going to be a complete repricing in markets. We're going to see 30 to 50% down in stocks, bonds, gold. Doesn't matter where your money is, crypto included. There's going to be significant volatility and repricing of all of these assets. This person says, you've given a lot of people a light at the end of the tunnel, buddy. Keep on bringing the great info. Thanks. God bless you and your family. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words. Appreciate you guys being here, asking good questions. Again, none of this matters if you guys aren't here and care, to listen. Again, feel super blessed and humbled that so many people care what I have to say. So thank y'all. And same thing for the company. Like anything that we do, any of the services or products that we create really don't matter at all if it's not something that you guys would want to use or benefit from. So what we do is, again, selfish, right? Like I try to make all these things and do them the way that I would want them done if I was a client, because I am. And then, we democratize access to that for you guys. So, and again, that's a big portion of the Uphold app. A lot of people have felt like we've discriminated against smaller holders for a long period of time. We want some way to be able to work with you guys and have you in our ecosystem so that as your assets appreciate, we're continually able to offer you great service and products as you scale your wealth. So that's what this whole thing is about. Making sure that you have access to these things so that you don't have to sell, when the time comes, and you can mitigate taxes and structure things to be able to, mitigate creditor risk and hopefully pass these assets on for many, many generations. We got John Pletcher, excuse me. He says, hey Jake, how long should the 5% rich list holders wait to buy the yacht and act like youngsters again? I can't remember the rapper. It's not Dr. Dre. He's married to Beyonce. TikTok should know. Who's Jay-Z? So Jay-Z has a saying that if you can't buy it twice, then you probably shouldn't buy it at all. If you can't buy the super yacht twice and still be fine, you probably shouldn't buy it at all. So that's the level of rich that I would think you would need to be. I don't know how big a yacht you're talking. How big a boy are you? There's a lot of different size yachts out there. There's the yachts that I saw when I was in San Diego a few weeks ago that were out there, in the bay. And then there's Jeff Bezos' yacht that's like $200 million plus. Bezos could buy 10 of those and still not care, right? So that's the game. Like when you have enough money that you can buy it twice and still be fine, it doesn't affect you financially, that's probably the time when you can make those type of purchases and be okay. And they're probably still not wise purchases unless you're using it to be able to, offset capital gains or other things that you've made money on. Cody, he says, hey Jake, I'm tired, boss. Me too, dude. Can you give us some hope as to when a significant 4-digit XRP price appreciation will happen? Thanks. Still waiting on a couple events. Again, and I think I'm going to give you an order, okay? So I do think that we're waiting on them to align on what yield looks like for stable coins between the banks and institutions and exchanges. Once we have that in place, I think that Japan will raise interest rates and the reverse carry trade will start to unwind. I think that in the interim here, we could also see the U.S. sanction Tether, which would also cause significant demand for XRP. I think you could see Satoshi move his Bitcoin, which could cause a lot of doubt for Bitcoin and a rotation out of Bitcoin into XRP. I think that all of this is going to be timed. It's going to be the perfect storm. And when you start seeing some of these things play out, that's when you know it's about to happen. So just keep watching. Be patient. It's all going to work out. We got Beercoin in 4T. He says, Big J, client of DWP, awesome dude, glad to be working with you. Have signed up for custody, but haven't transferred my assets over yet. hoping to wait it out until yield-bearing assets come. So we just need price appreciation to get this. We're working on solutions. We're not waiting on price appreciation. Other partners might be waiting on price appreciation. We're tired of waiting. My whole team, we have 3 different avenues to be able to generate yield on XRP, and we are pursuing those aggressively with multiple partners. Okay, so I'm tired of waiting around on the partner that we would like to do this with. I don't know what their hesitation is, but we are going to move forward and find other people to work with since they're not willing to move forward with us. So we're going to figure it out for you guys, because it is the single biggest frustration that I hear from clients on a regular basis, and my own, mind you, that we don't have a yield product that produces monthly income to be able to offset the fees and put a little jingle in my pocket while I still have an allocation of my XRP. So we are, again, aggressively working on it, and we should have something in the near future. I know I've been saying that for months, but that was, again, predicated on a certain partner moving forward in a reasonable time frame, which has not happened. And now we've got 3 different avenues to be able to get this done with. So I'm very confident, after talking to my team today, that we are going to be able to execute on that and get you guys something in the very near future. We've got that Stevie Mac says, "Hey dude, big fan, quick question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?" Thanks. It's an interesting paradox, isn't it? Because you kind of can't, you need one in order to have the other. It's kind of like ROUSD and XRP. You need liquidity begets liquidity. Chickens beget chickens. So that would be my answer. Whichever one is XRP between the chicken and the egg, that was the one that came first. Whichever one is XRP between the chicken and the egg, that was the one that came first.